Thanks, Kath. Good morning. As Kath said, I'm Gareth Browning. I sit within the Department for Economy, Science and Transport in Welsh Government, so I haven't got the procurement background. I've been working for 15 years or so in a sort of business development role, involved in things like business incubation, working one-to-one with businesses, large and small, as well as academia as well. And around about 2 years ago, the SBRI programme sort of came on our radar. Out of interest, can I have a show of hands? Who's familiar with SBRI? We've got a few of you. So you guys, if you want to go back to bed now or go and prepare yourself to watch the eclipse, you may leave. So that Small Business Research Initiative, it's a programme championed by Innovate UK. Innovate UK are the innovation agency for the UK. They spend around about 500 million a year on business innovation projects through a range of different measures that they use. So SBRI is just one of the measures, Small Business Research Initiative. Should say the name is kind of a bit misleading. It's not just for small businesses. Research it is, but more towards technology demonstration, prototype development, and moving sort of ideas nearer to market. So a bit misleading, but anyone can engage, academia, industry, large and small. It came about, it's been operating successfully in the US since the early 80s under a program called SBIR. In the UK, we tried to kick it off in 2002, I think it was, and it failed miserably. The take-up from government departments was very low. So in 2009, it was reborn through what was the Technology Strategy Board, now Innovate UK, and they've been championing SBRI as a process and trying to get government departments and the public sector to actually engage more with the process. So what it's about solving public sector problems with innovative solutions from industry and from the market. Competitions run as an open competition to solve public sector challenges. What's different about SBRI to sort of procurement as we know it? It's run under pre-commercial procurement rules, so an EU exemption that allows public sector departments to define the scope of a project and a problem, and then reach out to industry to come up with innovative solutions. So it's not about writing a tender spec and saying this is what we want. It's about saying, whatever's out there on the market for whatever reason is either not fit for purpose, inadequate for whatever reason, or maybe there is nothing already on the market. But there's a need that the public sector see and identify and we're willing to put funding into to try and solve that problem. It's managed through usually a two-stage process, although it can be three. Typically, with an SBRI competition, you will fund, at stage one, you might fund 5 or 6 feasibility studies. Budgets can be anything from kind of 10, 20,000, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more, but that's generally what you'd be looking to fund. And project duration at stage one is typically 3 to 6 months. And then at stage two, you then have a closed pool where the companies that have won stage one contracts can bid for a stage two demonstration prototype contract. These tend to be a bit larger. You usually fund maybe two companies. And they can be in the region of 50, 100k upwards. In terms of the total size of an SBRI, it can be a £150,000 SBRI competition, as in the case of the one that Bob's going to talk about in a bit, right up to 20 million, which is where some of the health competitions have been, so quite wide-ranging. As I said, it operates on pre-commercial procurement rules. Companies get development contracts, so not grants, which is from where I sit in the Department for Economy, Science and Transport. We've got a range of different grant products which work well, which businesses come up with technology ideas. They put those proposals forward and we'll grant fund through various different intervention rates. They work well, there's a place for them. With SBRI, it's coming at differently in terms of awarding development contracts. 100% funding. The experience is that, again, businesses love 100% funding, and they love the opportunity to work with the public sector as the intelligent lead customer. It's deliverables based rather than hours worked, so different to grants. And the important thing with SBRI is that the IP rests with the company, but there's certain usage rights that, obviously, in recognition of the public sector funding the programme, there's a negotiation that typically happens between public sector and the company developing the IP in terms of accessing any IP that is generated. So why do you use SBRI? Basically, there's public sector have something that needs to be fixed. So look into the market, there might be solutions out there, but for whatever reason, we think they're inadequate. For example, DEC have run competitions looking at energy efficient lighting to try and stimulate the market to develop the next generation of lighting. MOD, very active with SBRI, they run a range of competitions to solve problems that are facing the military. It's about creating markets for things that don't exist. Very interesting report written by David Connell from Cambridge University, which was looking at SBRI, how it's operated across the UK. If you are interested in finding more out about SBRI, I'd suggest you have a read of his report, which is called Creating Markets for Things That Don't Exist. Another important thing with SBRI, and I think we struggle with this sometimes as the public sector, you need to recognise that you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's sometimes hard to get your head around, because we often think we know what the solution is, and we will tell the market this is exactly what we want. And what we're finding through the projects that we've been running, you can get some real kind of left field ideas that come forward that we would never in a million years have written into a tender specification. Another big thing for SBRI is about stimulating cross-boundary, cross-sector working. So, transferring technologies maybe from military or automotive into health, and we see businesses that are working in one sector sort of switching their technologies to respond to the competitions that come out, and yet it brings in new ideas, new technology, new innovation that we would never normally, or we might not easily have found. Another big thing for us within the innovation team in Welsh Government, we started on the road of sort of championing SBRI as an economic development tool. So, as I said, I don't sit in procurement, and our Minister, Edwina Hart, recognised the potential of SBRI to drive business innovation. And all the evidence that was coming out of Innovate UK from where SBRI has been run elsewhere in the UK was that if you run competitions locally, you will stimulate the market locally, which then means that you've got better chance of local businesses bidding and winning contracts. And to be honest, there was a bit of a leap of faith when we started on the road. We were told that would be the case, but there was that sort of nervousness, certainly that I had, where we had this vision that we would launch competitions, frame our challenges, and we'd get no interest from Welsh businesses in the local community. Thankfully, that didn't happen. It generated very, very positive response, which is why we're continuing with it. And I'll come on to our programme in a little minute. So as I've said, SBRI in the UK, been running since 2009. There's some numbers there, you can read them yourself. It's certainly been ramping up a lot over the last few years. Lots of public sector departments engaged. Department for Health, MOD are some of the bigger users. So back 2 years ago when we were trying to get SBRI off the ground, and I was challenged with by our minister to find challenges projects that lent themselves to SBRI. And what I started doing was talking to different departments, to local authorities, to some of the government agencies. And I found that lots of people would say, this approach seems very good, very sensible. I'd like to get involved. But we sort of struggled with discussions in terms of actually progressing to a point where we could frame a challenge, put budget behind it, and actually run a competition. And because people were nervous, it was something new that we hadn't done in Wales before. Excuse me. So we came up with the idea of a Welsh SBRI Innovation Catalyst programme, and essentially what this was a £3 million commitment over 3 years from the Economy, Science and Transport Minister to stimulate the market and to actually put some funding in the hands of the public sector problem owners to run SBRI competitions. So we in effect were bankrolling the initial challenges to start getting take up and to get public sector problem owners to give them the confidence really and the financial backing to to run competitions. Innovate UK partnered with us on that, and they were co-funders and still are co-funders in the programme. We've now run 2 calls, and I'll just go through some of the challenges that we've been funding, just to give you a flavour of some of the problems that we've been trying to address with SBRI, and then I'll hand over to Bob in a short while to go into a bit more detail on one of our competitions. The other thing I should mention, Value Wales, the procurement arm of Welsh Government, been very supportive, and we've developed a toolkit to help problem owners with running their competitions. So these are all the forms, the documents, the things that help on a sort of practical basis to make running competitions easier. So moving on to the competitions that we've run. 3 competitions with the NHS in Wales, 2 with Betsy Cadwaladr Health Board in the north. The first one was about enabling nurses to spend 10% more time with patients. So this is trying to get patient to get the nurse at the bedside rather than behind a computer doing all the the back office stuff. What we've got to a point there now. We've got 2 demonstrators. This was a £1 million project. We've got 2 demonstrator projects that are taking place in 2 of our hospitals in North Wales. We're using children's wards because they're representative of all the sort of challenges that the health professions have to deal with. So they do everything from sort of cardiac, broken bones, you name it. It's all dealt with on the children's wards. And what the projects are doing there is looking at or deploying a range of things like mobile tech devices, so tablets, things like apps, interactive whiteboards, and putting together a range of different tech to essentially to remove duplication in effort. So rather than the nurses asking the same question time and time again, input once, use many, that kind of approach. The important thing with that project is that we've got nurses seconded to the project. We've got some of the informatics team working closely with the companies that have won contracts. So this whole kind of co-production idea really working in action. And I think by the end of the year, we're going to have 2 very interesting and hopefully successful demonstrators operating in 2 of our hospitals. The other SBRI that Betsy are running is about promoting independence in cooking tasks to help people. Basically, this is about helping people with brain injuries to live more independently at home, to help them with cooking tasks. Big issue for the health board is around the occupational therapists have to go to a person's home. They then have to help somebody to prepare a meal, cook a meal, make sure they've got the right ingredients. Very, very labour intensive. Lots of travel time for the occupational therapists that are performing that role. And what they're looking for in this challenge is technology solutions that can actually help to give people more independence living at home, remove some of that sort of immediate, or the resource requirement from the health board, so freeing up some of the time, but importantly giving people more independence at home. That competition's launched recently. There's a briefing event on Monday, next Monday, so not much notice, but if anybody's interested in attending that, it's taking place in Wrexham on Monday. We had another challenge with ABMU Health Board. This was about improving health and well-being of the population through use of health data. What we've got in Wales, we've got something called the Sale Data Bank. This has got billions of records of anonymised health data. And currently that's used for research, but what we're not able to use it for in the health board is actually predicting future requirements, looking at services, looking at trends, and the analytics teams in ABMU Health Board, we're looking to get more value out of the data that they're holding. It's actually held in Swansea University in this case. So we've got 2 very interesting projects, both Welsh companies won contracts here, that are looking at innovative ways of handling data, using data to present that data in a more useful format for strategic health decisions to be made. I've talked about the brain injury, and so I'll move on because I'm conscious of time. Just to give you a bit more of a flavour of some of the other sort of projects as well. Cardiff Council, we ran a project which was looking at heritage retrofit. Cardiff's problem space was that there's a lot of energy efficient solutions out there on the market, but for heritage and old buildings, they don't always work for visual reasons, for building fabric reasons. So what they were interested in, this was about a £500,000 competition, was finding innovative solutions that can be applied to old and historic building stock to improve the energy performance. We've got 3 really interesting projects there. Just one of them was which we'd never ever have gone up for tender for, was a company called Qbot that are developing a robot that you basically put into the floorboard. You lift a floorboard, or you go through a block under a suspended floor, and this climbing robot is looking at spraying insulation material at the underside of floorboards. We'd never thought about it, but it was one of the projects that bid for the competition and has successfully been awarded stage 2 funding. And then we've got another one which is looking at lime mortar that is quick setting, which removes some of the problems of working with lime mortar and sort of old and traditional building materials. Fenceless Fencing was another one that we've supported through it, and Bob will talk in a little while about that project. Another project that I've been working with over the last few months with South Wales Police. So I hope this is useful. I'm just trying to give a range of the different sorts of projects and the challenges that we're addressing with SPRI. Next generation predictive policing. South Wales Police, in the top 5, I believe, in the UK for police forces for mobile data. They've obviously got more and more pressure on resources, less police officers available, so how they use their resource is more important than ever. And what this challenge is looking at is predicting where we should deploy police officers based on, again, historic trends, similar to the health sort of project, but with police data, looking at things like, big events that might be taking place, weather conditions, things that, environmental factors, things that can impact where crime might happen, when it might happen, and how inspectors should deploy their resource more effectively. We've got to the point with this one where we had about 28 applications, got a sift of applications next week, so we'll have a better idea of the projects we're supporting soon on that one. I talked a lot about the other organisations, Welsh, that are running SPRI. The first Welsh Government led challenge is about reducing motorcycle casualties. This has been driven by our transport team. We've got a range of different programmes, different measures, all targeted at reducing the casualties on roads through things like training, the work that ROSPA do, that Go Safe, to try and reduce the number of casualties on Welsh roads. And despite all the efforts that are currently in place, the trend really is it's not going up anymore, but it's not going down either. So what we're interested in is looking at if there's innovative measures that can actually save lives, reduce the seriousness of injuries. We know that bike technology's moved on, the bike equipment, biker equipment, helmet technologies have all moved on, but the number of injuries are still staying the same. So this challenge is looking at if there's something else out there that we don't know about that could improve safety on Welsh roads. Just wanted to flag up the long-term care revolution event. Again, not much notice, I'm afraid, but 24th of March. This is an Innovate UK-driven SPRI competition, 4 million budget. And what this is looking at is sort of blowing apart the whole institutional care model that exists in the UK. The view from Innovate UK is that it's a sort of old, tired model that doesn't work. So how can we actually improve care services? How can we involve things like architects, builders, academics, care providers, and actually try and come up with a model that actually is more suitable for the future for us. Just sort of finishing up really now, but some of the benefits that we found from running the SPRI programme to date, as I say, it's still early days for us, we're only 2 years in. We will have issued around about 5 million in new contracts to businesses across the 2 Catalyst programme calls. As I said earlier, the Welsh response has been fantastic, and we've got about 53% of all the Call 1 contracts have actually gone to Welsh businesses. So as an economic development tool, we're really pleased that that's addressing the objective that we were hoping it would. We're starting to see some of the companies taking new staff on in order to resource the project delivery. So as a job creation, not large numbers, but we're seeing jobs created, so positive steps. And the sort of last point there, before we came up with the Catalyst programme, Welsh companies weren't engaging with SPRI as much as we'd like. With only 2 businesses, we've seen that leap to 14 through our programme, but also we're seeing the businesses that are bidding for the calls that we've put out look into the other SPRI competitions and bidding for other contracts as well. So it's becoming something the companies are looking out for. In terms of where it sits in a UK government context, back in 2013, the Chancellor made a commitment that that 0.25% of procurement spend would go through SPRI in 2013-14, and in 2014-15, 0.5%. That was across the 6 largest departments in the UK. So that was Department for Energy and Climate Change, DFT, Home Office, MOD, and some of the others. I think some of them have met their targets, some haven't. I think there's an issue around need to ring-fence budget for these activities, and finding good people within the public sector that are willing to take on the challenge of running SPRI competitions. So I think there's obviously a political will in the UK, but I think there's still a bit of work to do in terms of actually meeting those numbers that the Chancellor laid out. In Wales, we're ramping up more work with SPRI. We haven't got a percentage commitment in the way that the UK has yet. Whether we do in the future, who knows? I put that up there. If we spend 0.5% of our 4 billion, that's 20 million SPRI contracts. So some final thoughts. I don't know how I'm doing for time. Sorry? Very, very, very quickly then. US studies found 20% cheaper products result through this process. You can get the desired degree of interoperability from the start. We're seeing that a lot with the health board projects, where you've got nursing staff, informatics staff working with the company suppliers. So, ironing out a lot of the problems early on. We're going to be continuing to raise the awareness and use of pre-commercial procurement, and we're looking forward to sort of further SPRIs that we're hoping to kick off towards the end of the year. I think there's a big challenge in terms of risk acceptance and what we call the honourable failure. Not all projects will work or work out as you plan, but I think SPRI gives you a chance to fund a handful of projects, and if you get 1 or 2 out of 5 maybe that you fund at stage 1 that actually come to something, it's well worth doing. Mentioned earlier, ring fencing budget, I think really important. You need to ring fence budget, and you need good staff to actually run the SPRI competitions to make them happen. I think we need to increase the amount of support to problem owners as well, because what we're finding is, we're engaging with nursing staff. They don't understand the world of government funding. They're not interested in that. They want to care for patients, but they understand the problem. So how we support them, very, very important. Thanks for listening.